Welcome to another episode of the One Tree Hill Rewatch. Today we're going to talk about episode 104 through episode 107. So the first episode is 104, Crash Into You. Now the episode is about Nathan throwing a party at his beach house after Lucas has a successful game. Really, this is just another way for Nathan to humiliate Lucas. But, the main big thing that happens in this episode is something that I'm surprised WB let them do at the time, and that is Nathan drives drunk. He takes Haley home, and after doing that, he crashes the car, right? Lucas is out there because he had left the party and was driving around, sees Nathan crash the car, confronts him, Nathan walks away, and Lucas ends up taking the car back to Keith's shop to get them doing repairs for it, because he doesn't want the blame to go to Peyton, who was also drinking that night, and Nathan talked about possibly putting the blame on her. Once again, forgotten how awful Nathan is in the first season of One Tree Hill. Mainly the first few episodes, but, this one in particular. Back to what I was saying before, is very rich writing. Season 1 is extraordinary. The first couple seasons the first 3 seasons have the best writing in the series. I'm not going to talk about my favorite seasons yet or go into any of that, but the first 3 seasons definitely have the best writing. And this is also the entrance of Deb to the show, who there's a lot of change with Deb throughout the series. She comes in this episode, and even in season 1 in general, for the most part, she's a really likable character. For me, that changes over the course of the series, but in this one, she's definitely seems like a mom that cares and helps put together the Scott family, I think. We get to the next episode, 105, All That You Can't Leave Behind, which a couple big things happen in this episode. One, there's the father-son basketball game, which I loved. Thought it was a great way to show the relationships between both Dan and Nathan and Lucas and Keith, and show them separately and then show them together, and see the two sides of that coin of the Scott families. And it starts to further show why Nathan is the way that he is. And also in this episode, Lucas considers changing his last name, but ends up not doing it because Keith has the last name as well. But he does, still not wear the Scott on the back of his jersey. The other big thing that happens in this episode is the anniversary of Peyton's mom's death. So she's taking that really hard, keeps running red lights, which I thought was a great story and adds more depth to her character, and how that affects her world and all the other characters around her. The end of that episode, we see this great shot with her talking to Nathan and him not even realizing that it's her mom's death anniversary, and then he asks her why she came, and we have this scene where she looks at Lucas, music's playing. It's a wonderful scene. Let's go to the next episode. Really, these first few episodes is just giving me it's gonna be me just giving my brief thoughts, because they're pretty straightforward. When we get further into the show, there's gonna be more complex storylines. Not that makes them any better, but more complex, more to dive into than the straightforward stuff that is happening in these current episodes. We get to the next episode, 106, Every Night is Another Story. Really good episode, because this is the first episode that we actually get to have fun. It's not just heavy drama. It's fun, but it also adds to the story and builds on the characters that we know. Gives a lot of insight into Nathan in this episode, and starts to show us a new kind of relationship with him and Lucas. And I think it was very good, like I said with Nathan and Lucas. It also, puts all of the younger female main characters together with Brooke, Peyton, and Haley, and showing their dynamic, especially Peyton and Haley, who at the start of the series are starting to become good friends, and a friendship that I don't think continues as well as they could have done throughout the series, but I liked it here. Like I said, really good writing, real conversations, and that's the whole thing with One Tree Hill, especially these first few seasons, and season 1 in particular. They have real conversations, real stories, real people that you can relate to and you can understand. It's not just fluffy shit too that is just bad writing. It's real. You can believe it. The one thing I don't like about episode 6 is the story that Nathan tells about Dan. Now, obviously, it happened. The character did do that because Nathan is sincere in this moment. There's another story that Deb tells later down the line, and I'll talk about that when we get to that episode, that I don't like either. And it just, despite the stuff that Dan does in the show that it's obviously bad, this story, right? So like Nathan's talking about when he was in Little League and he made a bad decision, or a bad decision according to Dan, and Dan pulled him over and kicked him in front of the crowd, and then set him down and put somebody else in the game. It doesn't seem like something Dan would do, especially in front of for one thing, in front of people, because Dan's all about image, and I can't see him doing that to a kid, Nathan. But it is his character, because Nathan was sincere in the moment. I felt like that was odd, and I don't ever get that vibe that would have happened from Dan. Then we get to the last episode I'm going to talk about this morning, and that's 107, Life in a Glass House. One of my favorite episodes of season 1. Just love that everyone was under the same roof or in the same area most of the whole episode. How Dan was pretty much just walking around and observing what was happening to his world in this episode. He furthered the storyline with him and Keith, who in the last episode I forgot to mention got into a fight over a remark over Karen. Then after that, obviously, Keith tells Karen that he loves her, which is going to be a big thread and big storyline throughout the season. But relationship with Dan and Keith, so rocky. Start to see more glimpses into the Nathan and Haley relationship. That Nathan feels bad about what happens when Brooke reads that letter out, and he tries to go to apologize to Haley and tell her that he didn't know and she doesn't want to hear it. Really great moments in this. I love the scene where Lucas comes to visit Haley after the party, and you have this little friendship, and just so important how the Lucas and Haley friendship is the entire show. I'm really glad that they never try to do anything romantic with those characters. That would have been terrible. Brooks in this episode, she's pretty awful in this episode as far as like just being mean and whatnot. I feel like her and Dan, two of my favorite characters, have some of the best character progression throughout the entire series, from where they start to where they end. Just amazing writing and storylines, I think. One thing I had written down that I think is interesting is that Haley travel a lot. We of course see her throughout season 1 wearing a lot of clothes that have like different cities on it, which this could be a thing. Like you can get those in like Old Navy, right? But we know too that her parents in season 2, when we get there, they end up getting an RV and leaving Tree Hill. So it makes me wonder, did Haley and her family travel a lot as kids? And this kind of just like adds a little thing that I didn't notice the first time I watched it. Other little shots that I thought were really good in this episode. You have the scene where Brooke dares Peyton to show how she really feels and kiss Lucas. She does, and then it cuts to Nathan and sees Nathan's reaction. And I thought that was good, because I don't think Nathan is really like that upset over him and Peyton breaking up. I think he's upset about it, but I don't think he's like destroyed about it. But just seeing like them two kiss, he doesn't get mad, but it's this kind of like, oh man, like that kind of hurt. So I like that moment. There was the fact too, Dan kept Karen and Lucas to himself and never told Deb. That's still bad. That's bad, obviously. But I do think it adds a little thing to his character to think about, is that he had to keep that he kept that to himself, and how that added to his character and his mindset. that was probably tearing him during that time. And other later stuff too that we'll find out about, him going to see Lucas when he was born and all this different stuff. But love the quotes in this episode from Karen to Dan, where she tells him, take a look around, look how wonderful your life is. Stop living in the past. And I feel like that just felt like to me a moment, because if he had listened to her in that scene, imagine how differently the show would be moving forward. But he doesn't take that advice, obviously, and I feel like that is a big part of his character, and that quote kind of just like sums up his storyline for a lot of the show. As he had this really great life, but he kept looking to the past, and look where that gets you. I think that's about it for this. I'm ready to get into like some more future episodes, a lot more to talk about, but I really love so far some of my favorite storylines up to this point is the Lucas and Peyton relationship. I think it is very, very real, something you can very relate to. I love that. I love the friendship with him and Haley, and I love the back and forth with Dan and Keith. Those are some of my favorite things up until this point. All right, guys, I'll see you next time.